quick addendum before we begin the episode. Before the editing process for this video began, I discovered that the creator of the anime in question got into some controversy for positively retweeting an article defending J.K. Rowling's transphobia, despite that seemingly contradicting her work. I don't think it detracts too much from the thesis of this video, except for one interpretation later on, which I will denote later on when it comes up. But this was added for full clarity on the subject, and so nobody felt the need to correct it in the comments later. No matter what happened to Takako Shimura, my message will remain the same: trans rights are human rights. With that being said, enjoy the video.
I don't know if this is a common thing for people in my generation, but high school is when I guess I could be considered entering my anime phase. I knew of anime prior, but it was mostly the basic stuff that everybody knew, like Pokemon, Dragon Ball, Naruto, One Piece, and of those four, I only watched one. But then, after hanging out with my school's weird kids, I started getting some recommendations and watched some pretty notable anime of the era. Black Butler, Lucky Star, Panty and Stocking. I would also start getting into some anime YouTubers, and one of them recommended this show during one of their Pride Month videos. And after watching one episode, I proceeded to binge the entire show in one day. And to celebrate the 10 years it's been since I saw this initially, and the wonderful community that inspired its creation, I decided to revisit this anime and give it a more critical analysis. Spoilers for the show and bits of the manga ahead. I highly recommend you watch this for yourself. Just be prepared for your hearts to hurt the whole time. Wandering Sun is a 12-episode anime based on a 15-volume manga by Takako Shimura, primarily detailing the story of two characters, Shuichi Nitori and Yoshino Takatsuki, two school children who discover that they are both suffering from gender dysphoria, being male to female and female to male respectively, with the story, of course, being how they navigate their lives with this information as they come of age, dating, friendships, societal pressure, etc. And once you start getting into this franchise, you'll be met with the immediate biggest difference between the manga and the anime. While the manga spans from the lives of these characters from grade 5 all the way to university, the show only covers their first 2 years of junior high, thrusting you in the middle of character drama and not really ending the story, but more so stopping the story. And honestly, that's kind of interesting, to be honest. I mean, rarely does a story start at the actual beginning, but the fact that the show really does acknowledge that this is just one section of a larger story is really fascinating to me. And they do a great task of not only catching you up to speed on all the stuff that happens in the past, but also leaves things open on what happens next for the characters. Granted, the latter part was because the manga was still being written, and by the time the show ended, it was already up to date to where the manga was. But the fact they chose to leave the show open-ended rather than doing the route of Full Metal Alchemist, or in my case, Black Butler, was very interesting in my honest opinion. Back to the show's synopsis, there are also many other characters that drive the plot forward. Yuki, an older trans woman who serves as a mentor to the two, Shuichi's older sister Maho, who is not exactly supportive of her new trans sister, Sayori Chiba, a friend of Shuichi who is a little too supportive, and a new student that they meet called Chizaru Sarashina, who in the first episode goes to school wearing a male student's uniform, which inspires Yoshino to do the same thing, and eventually Shuichi as well, but that's for a little later. Now, I will say this. This anime hits deep. Even as someone who is not trans and has no interest in being trans, Episode 1 hurt. It hurt when I first saw it, and it hurt way worse when I saw it again. Shuichi is still reeling from being rejected by Yoshino last year, who has not spoken to her since that time, thus depriving her of the closest person who understands what she's going through. To get her mind off of it, Shuichi decides to head across town, dressed up in a female school uniform. That way, even if for just a couple of hours, Shuichi can live the life that she desperately wants to live. After returning home and feeling way better, she sees her sister's dress and decides no one's around, might as well try it on. Even looking for a hairpin that a store clerk gave her because the store clerk said it would complement her appearance. And right as she does that, Maho shows up, who rips the dress off of her and calls Shuichi Kimuchawuri, which for the anime nerds out there doesn't have an exact translation, but roughly translates to disgusting or creepy, which causes Shuichi to run out of the house barely dressed, that word echoing through her head over and over and over. And it just so happens she runs past Yoshino, who simply asks Shuichi, "What happened?" And Shuichi just breaks down right there. And that scene absolutely hurt. Nobody should be going through what Shuichi's going through, much less someone Shuichi's age, that they feel that their entire existence is disgusting. I never went through that phase, and while Shuichi specifically is fictional, there are many people going through what she's going through right now, and that sucks. I wouldn't say that this anime specifically made me pro-trans, but it definitely played a role by doing something very simple: treating trans people with basic human empathy, a thing that many seem to still be struggling with. And while I pulled the knife out of my chest, I quickly remembered, wait, this is just episode 1. And the rest of the show only continues with this momentum, showing a very real depiction of how a young person navigating maturity would act, especially someone who is trans or otherwise LGBT. You have people who treat you weirdly. Obviously, we have the transphobia angle, but they also surprisingly show the angle of fake allies, having not one, but 2 chaser characters in the show, who are on a first glance at least somewhat supportive, but for very obvious non-ally reasons. Sayori is super obsessive of Shuichi wearing feminine clothes, but when it comes to Yoshino, she is very quick to shoot down the idea that Yoshino is trans. Sayori even starts giving this kind of shit to Shuichi at one point. And the reason why is because Sayori is crushing on Shu and perceives Yoshino as a romantic rival. Another character named Doi, a former bully of Shuichi's, ends up becoming friendly with her once he sees that Shu is friends with Yuki, because he's attracted to Yuki, and after learning that Shu is also trans, seems very eager to see it for himself, even encouraging her to dress as a girl at school. And while Doi pretends that he's doing it as a joke, even afterwards, he's still trying to get Shu to do it more, especially when it's just those two. Doi's clearly learning something about himself that he's having trouble admitting. Another character that clearly has some self-discovery to do is Fumiya Ninomiya, a friend of Sayori from church who clearly has a thing for her. But after he learns that she's only interested in Shuichi, begins to start cross-dressing. oddly enough, not even doing it to impress Sayori. Fumiya just starts doing it to prove they can. In the manga, they even start to hang out with Shoichi, and Fumiya opens up about the fact that they like being called cute and wants guys to hit on them. I don't think they ever express desire to transition, but that actually kind of shows a lot more fluidity in gender, that even if you do dress, you don't necessarily have to identify as a girl. Speaking of, another thing that deals with that subject is the ending of the manga. Since the manga goes further in their lives than the anime, Shuichi and Yoshino go through more trials and tribulations, which takes their journeys into somewhat different directions. The biggest one being the fact that at the end of high school, while Shuichi is absolutely determined to make a full transition, Yoshino no longer wants to transition and chooses to live the rest of her life as a woman. While some see that ending as sad or disappointing, I choose to look at it in a more positive outlook. To be a trans ally, you have to be supportive of trans people in the decisions they make, not force what you perceive the right way to express their identity is. If they are not comfortable coming out, you don't out them without their permission. Let them boy mode if they want to boy mode. If the egg isn't cracked, you don't throw it at a wall. And if they make the active choice that this path is not the right one for them, that's totally fine as well. I guess I can't speak for everybody, but in my point of view, I want everybody to be comfortable with their true selves. That's why I'm an advocate for trans rights. Because even just saying the fact that trans people exist and are completely normal might help give answers to people who really need it. Granted, I haven't read the manga, so maybe there's a chance that parts of the story make them feel this specific way, but I just like to think of it as Yoshino is just naturally part of the 0.36% of people who are identified as trans who feel that transitioning is not the right path forward. But then again, maybe I'm just trying to push a happy ending to the story. Not to knock the possibility of societal pressure as a factor, as that's touched upon a lot in the story as well. You can't really do a story about trans topics without it. Both the obvious external factors, but also a lot of internal factors as well. One protagonist that I have yet to mention is Makoto Ariga, a friend of Shuichi who is also a trans girl, but she feels intimidated because she doesn't have the, quote, natural femininity that Shu has. The manga even gives us a character called Taichiro Ebina, Shu's 30-year-old boss, who discovers that they are trans, who is also jealous of Shu's perceived natural femininity. But both of them learn to overcome it and accept who they are. They also address some massive areas of hypocrisy. When Shuichi shows up to school in a schoolgirl outfit, she's lectured by the teachers and then sent home with her parents, followed by a lot of bullying once they return back to school. Meanwhile, Yoshino and Chizuru didn't get as much crap for doing the same thing prior. Not to say they didn't get anything, but Shuichi definitely got the worst of the bunch. With this element of hypocrisy actually being the main thesis behind the creation of the manga, Shimura explained that a male-to-female junior high student would have a lot more societal pressure than any other gender identity and age group. And considering my last review was of a show where the female protagonist cross-dresses and nobody questions their femininity, meanwhile, we still have people arguing that a canonically trans character is actually just a boy in a dress so they can keep their fetishized goonbait character. She seems to actually have a solid point in that analysis. And funnily enough, there's actually another element of that analysis that can kind of be pointed towards the current political climate regarding anti-trans stuff. Let's go back to the scene where Shuichi's in the office after arriving at school in a schoolgirl uniform. Their teacher, Saisho Manabu, is lecturing them about how wrong it is for them to wear the opposite sex's clothes, yada yada yada. We all know the spiel, we all know the stuff, blah blah blah, yeah, we've heard this stuff before. What's very interesting about this scene and this lecture is the fact that the guy who is lecturing these three about what is considered normal is a canonical pedophile. Like, this teacher has a not-so-hidden relationship with one of his students, which is touched upon in multiple episodes. Again, very coincidental that this is the person who becomes the most vocal in opposing the trans students, considering who the vanguard of transphobia in the modern day is. The only thing that I find odd is the fact that this is never acknowledged. I mean, not even by many of the reviews that I've seen of this show. Not on the wiki, not on TV Tropes. Again, none of the reviews that I've seen of this show, it's like I'm the first person that has pieced this together. Which is sadly because of the fact that if you know anything about anime, you know that there is a very unfortunate byproduct from anime and Japanese culture broadly. Like, I've seen normal anime that is not inherently weird that gets into this weird category at random points. Black Butler seems to like doing a lot of teasing about a very creepy ship. Lucky Star has Konata's dad be a very open creep. And of course, anime has that one dreaded subcategory that people will defend till the ends of the earth. Despite the fact that the genre explicitly borrows its name from a pop psychology book that explicitly describes real attraction to real people, made by a guy who seemingly wanted to use it to justify his own weird erotica in the 1960s, or the more broad grossness of human sexuality, which leads us to the point where schoolgirl outfits are fetishized. But again, these are the guys who feel the need to lecture trans people on morally acceptable behavior. Give me a fucking break. So yeah, this show is great, I recommend it, 10 out of 10, would watch again. But now I want to close this video with a message to any trans person who happens to be watching this. I know things might be difficult right now, and things might be difficult for a while, but don't let that deter you. In a world where your mere existence is an act of resistance, the best thing you can do is to continue to exist. Show them that no matter what they say, you won't back down from being who you are. I know that must be stressful and demoralizing to have to spend every day having to justify your very existence. And there will be days where you just want to give in. I haven't experienced even 1% of what you all go through, and I get that feeling almost every day. But you can't give them the satisfaction of winning. Not just for some political points, but for the fact that there are people out there who care about you and would hate to see them win. Friends, family, both blood and found, partners, etc. If you genuinely believe otherwise, that ends today, because I'll say it. I care about you. Yes, you, the one watching this video. Our paths may never cross. We might only exist as pixels on a screen to each other. But regardless of that fact, you are a person, and you deserve the basic dignity that I get to enjoy every day. And it's a shame that you don't. Those words might mean little to you, or they might mean everything. But it's true. It's better to internalize that sentiment than any of the fucking hate comments that you'll get for the mere fact that you exist. I'd say things will get better, but I can't guarantee that. But what I can guarantee is that people like me will be on your side doing what we can to at least try. Change only happens when people like you and I work together to fight for it. And hopefully, whatever part I have to play in this fight, I will do. Above all else, you are valid. Your feelings are real. Don't let some ignorant fucking loser online tell you that you are not. Every day it gets easier, but you have to do it every day. That's the hard part. As the singer Daisuke says at the beginning of every episode of this show, Ari no mama no kimi de ite indayo. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the bell to find a future video mine comes out. And if you want more content from me, consider supporting me on Patreon. Trans rights are human rights.